if we had the licensing rights, I would have played AC/DC's Back in Black because it's perfect for
Yeah.
like we're back, at least for a little
I
bit.
think the Olivia Newton-John song "I'm Sorry" would have been more appropriate, but also more in tune with our actual pace. But anyway, yeah. How you doing?
Yeah, yeah,
Looks like you had a good time with the
yeah. It
extended
was
family.
it's about as good a time as it gets with family. I think is the
I saw my mother the weekend before, and a good time in that case involves we got out of there without any crying, so I
yeah.
completely understand.
There you go. So a bunch has happened since I've been gone because I've chose a great
Yeah.
week. There was the Apple event, but that's yesterday. Well, not yesterday, last week. Yesterday, though, quite literally yesterday, Microsoft held their Xbox Game Showcase where they announced a bunch of stuff, notably the Xbox Series S Carbon Black 1 terabyte version. Paul, throw out for $349 dues coming September 1st.
Yeah, it's priced right? If you have an Xbox Series S and you add another 500 gigabytes of storage, you would spend a little bit more than the price of the new console. Plus, it comes in black, which I think we can agree is the correct color for a console. But yeah, nice.
Yeah. We also announced a bunch of Starfield stuff, including a new controller, headset. They look good, but I mean, it's like whatever. I mean, if that's your thing, that's your thing.
But of more interest is a kind of a state of Xbox discussion that occurred afterwards, which I'm actually kind of writing up now. Microsoft provided, so I don't want to ruin the article I'm writing, but the trick for Microsoft is that most regulatory bodies in the world have agreed to let them purchase Activision Blizzard. Two have not. This is like a comeback victory in overtime in a football game or something where they have to go to court and win on appeal in both cases to get this acquisition to go through. So despite whatever public protestations Phil Spencer and others might have, there's a very real chance that this thing won't go through. And they just spent the last 18 months crapping all over Xbox. Boo-hoo-hoo, we're number 2, we can't compete. All this stuff has come out about how far behind the Xbox really is. I've also made the case that they don't really talk about that. You could take a small chunk of the $69 billion that they were going to give to Activision or give for Activision Blizzard and maybe put that into mobile gaming, guys. Something like you could have done something over the past 5-8 years, whatever. So here they are. And what happens when the FTC and or the CMA or whatever courts say, no, sorry, you can't do it, right? You've just, kneecapped the Xbox platform. So now you got to try to roll it back, and and I think people watching or reading this or listening to this probably understand that Microsoft is not a company of hard numbers anymore. It's all about these vague things like, usage of the top tier games streamed through the cloud has risen by 400% because there were 3 people doing it before and now there are 11 or whatever that works out to. So they provided a mix of, I usually think in terms of soft and hard numbers. I guess there are also hard-ish numbers because there are things that are a little better than nothing, but not as good as actual numbers. Like we're not going to get consoles sold. We're not going to get anything like that, but they're providing some numbers. And I think the goal here is, and they're also, the goal is to say, actually, it's healthy. Like we're distant number 2. We're kind of Arby's to McDonald's or whatever. But we're still profitable or actually they can't say that. It's still a business, whatever. But we're also going to make some promises, right? Because there are other things they've done wrong, right? Like not released any major new franchise games in a couple of years, or released some games like Redfall that are like hot garbage. So I found that whole part of it very interesting because because of the optics. I mean, they've spent so much time crapping on Xbox. It's hard to walk back.
There's a bunch of little stuff in that post too, such as they said they want to release 4 first-party games per year.
That's one of the promises. That's right.
That's one of them. And you would assume that if they can close the Activision deal, that number would increase at least by 1 because they
certainly
Call
gets
of
easier.
Duty.
It certainly gets easier. Yeah.
They also are bringing PC Game Pass games are coming to GeForce Now very soon. So
yeah, we already kind of knew about that.
Yeah, they were starting to do some games, but now it's just like, look, the whole PC Game Pass thing can be done through them if you want.
Look, there's got to be a group at Microsoft who are saying, look, this isn't going to happen, or maybe this isn't going to happen. I don't care how you say it. We need a a way forward here that still helps us grow and we, whatever. And so I think this is that conversation, right? Because obviously if Activision Blizzard goes through, these goals are all very easy to achieve. All of a sudden, it gets easier, but we still need I don't know. This is going to sound like a weird comparison, but I just went back and reread a book about the fall of Commodore, the company that made the Amiga.
Oh,
the Amiga
what's the name of the book?
The author's name is Brian Bagnall. It's actually the fourth in a series of books, and I think it's called The Fall of Commodore. I can't remember. You think I would just know exactly what it's called? Anyway, it's a good book. It's self-published, but he talked to all the people who were involved, and lots of good material in there. It's very detailed. I think the Amiga is the biggest technological disaster, like that, the thing that should have been successful that wasn't, and it was all mismanagement on Commodore's part, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, as that thing was going down the tubes, they would have these World of Commodore events, and executives would show up, and they would say, we're plotting a way forward, and it all sounded very exciting. In fact, I went to the last one they held in Los Angeles in 1994, I bet it was. And, CD32 was coming out. They had Amiga 5000 was going to happen. That never happened. And, just the Commodore just fell apart. They couldn't do any of the stuff they wanted to do. And obviously Microsoft is not in that financial condition, but it's hard not to, just because I just read about this, like I'm looking at this Xbox thing and I'm like, man, oh yeah. The everything's fine conversation, next to the sick person in the bed in the hospital. It feels a little, it feels like what it is, right? It's like, maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's weird that I would never have thought. I thought what Microsoft did. I do think what Microsoft has done strategically with Xbox makes sense, but it's also fair to say, like in the last year and a half, all this data has come out, and like the Xbox isn't like down by 2-1 Sony. It's like 3-1 or 4-1, depending on where you're looking, and it's worse than we thought, And this Activision Blizzard thing almost suddenly feels like a necessity for Xbox to grow, because they're not going to grow in this market they're in, like in consoles. Like this other stuff they're doing is good. Game Pass makes sense. It's smart. But for it to really make sense, they really do need this library. And this is the one area that Sony has done a much better job than them. And it never seemed like that big of a deal to me, but now it seems like a bigger deal to me. Like, I don't know. It's just I'm babbling. I'm sorry. It's just it's just consuming my brain right now. Like Xbox, like it's like what I think they meant to be reassuring, and for me, I was like, this doesn't feel reassuring,
Is the name of the book On the Edge: The Spectacular Rise and Fall of Commodore?
No, it is not. The guys. Sorry, I'll just look him up. It's Brian Bagnall.
Yeah, that's who wrote this one.
Oh, okay. So he's written. There's a series of these books. So, there's Commodore the Amiga Years, which is the one before that, and which I've read all his books actually. But actually, this one, Commodore Company. It's called Commodore the Final Years. The fourth one actually is the first one in the series. It's the one he wrote last. There should be a fifth one because there's a history of Commodore or of the Amiga that happens after Commodore failed, which is a tragic comedy, but involving such companies as SCOM and Gateway 2000. But anywho, I know. What was your? So I'm sorry, I've been babbling. What do you take? Did you come away feeling good about stuff, or what was your?
Like it's. So the obvious big bet from Microsoft is Starfield. Like they came in, they're like, Forza's coming October 10th, yeah, right here. And then they're like, here's Starfield.
Yep.
And they did this massive thing. It's going to come in at 30 frames per second, which, whatever. That's a whole different conversation. They're betting a lot on this game. So this game needs to come out polished. It needs to come out in the state that they're promoting it in.
You think polished means 30 frames per second?
I'm just from the world's most powerful console. Which that's like a whole different thing. Like Microsoft, the whole point, I've like noodling in my head, like, is the Series X just a complete failure? Like, was it a complete waste of time?
I thank you. So again, this is literally what I'm wrestling with, because I feel like the Series S and X were such a huge improvement over the Xbox One that they did the right thing. And there's this debate, two consoles, different capabilities. We can debate that too. But yeah, how many games come out at 30 frames per second when you're like, do we need a Series Y now, guys? So like, what's going on?
Right.
They were very clear that they don't feel the need to go to the next version of anything right now.
Yep.
And
so I keep noodling around that because it's.
Yep. Well, here's something to consider. Sorry, Xbox One to Xbox One S, Xbox One S to Xbox One X. How many years were between those two things? I'm going to say probably 2. Right?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe 3. But yeah.
Okay, maybe 3. Well, this fall will be 3 years, right? Didn't they come out in 2020, right at the heart of the pandemic?
Yeah.
So when we're good to go, we've come to market with the army we have or whatever. I think I don't know. They're releasing a new Series S, which has no hardware differences other than storage. Instead of what they should be doing, which is making the Series X the S, and coming up with a new X that does whatever such a thing might do, a 8X and VR and whatever else. I don't know.
I'm trying to find the Xbox One X. What was it?
I feel like whatever it is, it's 2 to 3 years, right? I mean, the Xbox One came out in 2015. So there was a 5. Actually, it would almost have to have been like 2 years because 2 to 3 years because of the time frame, right? 2015 to 2020. Am I right about that? No, it's 2013.
Yeah, well, the first post I found said 2017, maybe, but I'm not. Okay. That's the day the post was written. Was written. June of 2017. There you go.
So actually, maybe it was 4 years. All right, there you go.
And then the Series X was launched 3 years later. Okay.
It was Series X or the Xbox One X.
No, the Xbox One X came out in 2017, and then the Series X came out in 2020.
Okay. Yeah, 3 years between seems like a good idea. I like the idea of midstream upgrades. I think that's one thing that they proved was smart. Sony did the same thing. They had a PlayStation 4 Pro, right? Yeah, maybe this is the earliest possible time for something like this. Anyway, they've indicated they're not doing it, so don't worry about it. So next year there'll be a different story. Obviously, you market what you have, so there's not going to be a new console this year, meaning a truly new next generation or step-up console.
That's the way it appears.
Yep.
Anyways, we'll see what happens with the Series X. It feels like a big oddball. I understand why they did it. Like, they needed that marketing message. We have the world's most powerful console. But, other than that, it hasn't really materialized in any meaningful way. They even said the Series S, which is no surprise, is outselling the X by a wide margin. Right.
Series S is a very capable console. It's really value priced. It's easy to get in. There was a stat. I don't know if I have it in front of me here, but I want to say, I don't have it in front of me. It was an Apple-like stat. It was like 40-something% of people who bought the Series S were new to Xbox. This is the type of thing that would have been featured prominently in an Apple event. It's the double-digit number that doesn't make any sense, and it's such a great marketing point. And by the way, this also reminds me of the Amiga because it's like you get the low-end Amiga 500, it does great, and then they let it sit there and don't do it. Anyway, don't get me. I'm sorry. It's a great console. I use it. Well, I don't use it every day anymore, but I use it. That's the one I use. Okay.